Is the Minn Kota Kayak Terrova the kind of upgrade that will actually change your day on the water, or is it just another pricey gadget that ends up gathering dust? Who's going to get the most bang for the buck, and who should simply stick with a traditional paddle and maybe a small trolling motor? And for the everyday buyer who isn't a professional guide, does the price make sense for the benefits you'll see on a typical weekend outing? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you start thinking about a motor for a kayak, you're usually juggling a few fears. Will the unit be too heavy and throw off my balance? Will I end up spending a fortune on batteries that never last long enough? And what if I'm not a tech-savvy fisherman? Will all those GPS features actually help me, or will they just sit on a screen while I'm trying to reel in a bass? Those are the exact concerns I ran through while digging through forums, watching a handful of YouTubers set up the Terrova, and reading through the 282 ratings that gave it a solid 4.4 star average. The consensus is clear: the motor works, but the experience hinges on how you plan to use it. Let's start with the people who will love this thing. If you're the kind of paddler who spends a good chunk of your weekend chasing fish, moving from one hidden inlet to the next, the integrated GPS navigation is a game changer. Spotlock lets you pick a point on the map and the motor holds you there without you having to constantly adjust the throttle. In practice, that means you can drop a line, set your bait, and let the motor keep the kayak dead still while you focus on the fight. The One Boat Network compatibility also means you can pair the motor with a separate Minn Kota controller or a smartphone app, giving you the flexibility to manage speed, battery status, and GPS data from wherever you're sitting. For anyone who likes to map out a day of fishing spots ahead of time, that navigation suite actually saves time on the water instead of just being a novelty. On the other side of the coin, if your kayak outings are more about leisurely paddling, photo ops, or short trips to a nearby lake, the Terrova may feel overkill. The motor's 55 pounds thrust is plenty for pushing a loaded kayak through a current, but that also means the unit itself adds a noticeable amount of weight to the bow. People who are on the lighter side of the kayak spectrum, or who need to carry their boat over a long trail, often report that the extra 20+ pounds, including battery and wiring, makes the launch a bit more of a chore. The easy stow/deploy system with autopark does help. You can push a button and the motor tucks away automatically, which is handy if you need to switch back to paddling quickly. Still, you have to be comfortable handling that extra bulk every time you get on the water. Battery life is another practical factor that separates the happy customers from the "I wish I'd read the fine print" crowd. Minn Kota doesn't ship a dedicated battery with the Terrova. You need a separate 12V deep cycle or lithium pack that matches the motor's power draw. In real-world tests, anglers with a 100Ah lithium battery get roughly 56 hours of low-speed trolling before the charge drops low enough to trigger the digital maximizer's power-saving mode. If you're planning a full-day expedition and you haven't budgeted for a larger battery, you might find yourself cutting the trip short or having to swap out the pack midday, a hassle that many first-time users didn't anticipate. The upside is that the digital maximizer does stretch the runtime by automatically dialing back power when you're not fighting a current, but it's still a trade-off you need to plan for. Installation is something that catches a lot of people off guard. The motor mounts to the bow via a clamp system that's designed for kayaks with a reinforced front deck. If your hull is a soft plastic model without a reinforced bow, you'll need to buy a separate reinforcement kit, adding both cost and installation time. The good news is that once it's on, the autopark feature parks the motor in a few seconds, and the stow/deploy lever is intuitive enough that you can practice it while the kayak is still on shore. For those who are comfortable with a bit of DIY, a few bolts, a sealant, and a little patience, the setup is a weekend project. If you're looking for a plug-and-play solution that you can snap on in 10 minutes, you'll probably be disappointed. Now, about value. The headline price point sits in the upper mid-range for kayak trolling motors, and that's not accidental. Minn Kota is banking on the integrated GPS suite, the Spotlock feature, and the One Boat Network capability to justify the cost. When you compare it to a basic 30 pounds thrust motor that just gives you forward thrust, the Terrova's